Definitely. I mean, we're moving as, rapid fire through lots of information. People are getting a lot of content from today. And I know for me, I'm even taking notes too to try to keep up as well. So this is really great. So thank you all for joining us here. This is focused on what is equity crowdfunding and how it will revolutionizing funding. We have Krishan here. He'll share a lot about himself and his business, what he does, and tons of information. Jared here with Trellis is going to give me a mini break this midday, so that way he can dive right in, Krishan. So he has the pleasure to kind of geek out with them and to dive into this great information. So I will hand it over to you, Jared.
Hello, thank you so much, all. How are we doing, Megan? How's the day going?
It's going great. We have lots of information. I know people are really, having fun utilizing the chat box. So please make sure you all if you have any questions that Krishan doesn't already touch on, please type right in there. We're really here to deliver lots of value. And I mean, there's all different, tools and things like that. I know I've already gotten a couple things that I need to take care of for my business. So I really appreciate the information that I've gotten so far.
Yeah, so to sort of set today's agenda, we want it to be a little bit free form. I won't be the star of the show. We're lucky enough to get on to attend with us, who's one of the leaders in crowdfunding. I know that he himself would be a little shy to say this, but is someone that's really revered in the space. So we're fortunate to have him. We wanted to sort of take about 20 minutes. I had a couple of questions for Krishan that I was just super interested in, and I wanted to reserve the last 5 minutes or so to hopefully push it out to other people. So any of your ideas, feel free to, once again, as Megan shared, type them into the box as well. Krishan will be available throughout the day, and if there's questions in the future, we'll be sure to get you some answers. So to start out with, Megan did a nice warm welcome. But my name is Jared. I'm one of the 4 partners at Trellis, the e-commerce agency that's hosting this event. And Krishan is attending. I don't know, Krishan, if you want to give a quick background into yourself and sort of what your focuses are on.
Great. First of all, it's a pleasure to be here. Megan, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to see all the exciting people jumping in here. For all those that are viewing, my name is Krishan Arora, and I'm founder and CEO of an agency called the Arora Project. And what we do is simple, we help entrepreneurs achieve their dreams. How we do it is a bit more technical, and we'll get into that in a couple of seconds, but we specialize in fundraising for high growth ventures and then scaling them through digital strategies. And the primary way that we fundraise for high growth ventures is through crowdfunding, whether it be rewards-based crowdfunding, which is Kickstarter, Indiegogo, or if it's equity crowdfunding, which is Start Engine or WeFunder, and I'll get into what those platforms are and what they do. But in terms of acquiring capital needed to scale your business, crowdfunding is a phenomenal new path that has really become a multi-billion-dollar industry over the past decade, specifically equity crowdfunding that has already generated hundreds of millions of dollars over the past couple of years is a great avenue for businesses to acquire capital from their email list, their social media followers, their advocates around the company, instead of going down the traditional route. And that's what we specialize in. We have fundraised over $75 million through our crowdfunding campaigns, another $50 million through our digital funnels and our VC introductions. So, we have a very good, strong track record of working with over 200 businesses, fundraising over $100 million through our digital efforts, focusing in crowdfunding. And, we're excited to be here. Jared, we might have lost you on audio there for a second.
Sorry. The value of digital instead of being together here. You can't actually mute me, but yeah, I think it's a really interesting space. I mean, we constantly at Trellis run into the problem where we work with a lot of entrepreneurs who seem to have great products, great strategy, but lack one critical piece, which is usually funding. And while I think the news, the media, TV shows sensationalize sort of getting that big VC round, right? We all go on LinkedIn and see these companies getting $5, $10, $100 million to really bring their dreams to life. We found, and we're working with really passionate entrepreneurs, that a lot of them struggle to get this funding. I don't know if that's sort of perhaps where you saw a market opportunity. Or what the story is with a lot of your your folks? I mean, what do you see in funding? I'm not really an expert, I suppose.
I'll give a breakdown, and actually just published a piece in Forbes on this very topic. Taking a quick step back, if you're an entrepreneur, founder of a company, given the volume of companies and ideas being launched, especially in the past couple of years, as the social media, the internet, Shopify, Trellis, all these different organizations coming and making it easier for businesses to launch, you as an entrepreneur have to ask yourself, how am I going to get the funding needed to launch my business? Right? Primarily, and most of the things I'll say throughout the course of the next 20 minutes, refer to the middle of the bell curve. So if you look at a bell curve, there's obviously, the 10% at the front and the 10% at the back. There's always going to be exceptions to every rule, every generalized rule. So I'm referring to the 80% in the middle. So as an entrepreneur, in that 80% in the middle, you really only have 4 options, right? One being the most orthodox traditional avenue of going to a bank and getting a small business loan. Most banks will require collateral, such as a house or a car, to even think about giving you a loan. And entrepreneurs in 2020 don't really want to go down that route. So if you don't want to go down bank route, the second option is self-funding. Just like bank loans aren't the best option, self-funding is not a feasible option because most entrepreneurs don't have hundreds of thousands of dollars lying around in their savings that they can just invest in their own business to then hopefully scale and get a return years later. So that's not an option either. The third option being, friends and family funding. Similarly, most entrepreneurs in that middle of the bell curve don't have high net worth aunts, uncles, moms, or dads that'll just cut them a $500,000 check to launch their business. And the fourth and final option is VC or angel funding, which I have mixed feelings on. I have raised, institutional funding in the past. I've sort of mixed feelings on the matter because you really only get angel funding or VC funding when you've already started the fire and you just need the gas to sort of, really grow the fire from there. But that's, in my mind, kind of juxtaposed because you really need the funding early on to build the team, to build the product, and need someone to believe in you at the ground level to launch the business. So VCs are only really going to invest in you once you have the traction, the proof of concept, the proof of sale, and you've already done a lot of the legwork yourself, which I understand why their model is the way they are. So bank loans isn't really an option. Friends and family funding, isn't really an option. VC or angel funding isn't really an option. And self-funding isn't really an option for most people. So then you have to ask yourself, how the hell do I get the money I need to launch my business, right? If none of these really apply to me. Now, some of these options might apply to some entrepreneurs, but if most of these don't apply to me as an entrepreneur, they didn't apply to me. Any 4 of those weren't an option for me. How do I do it? That's where crowdfunding really came into play. And I'll break down crowdfunding into 2 different segments and allow people to ask any questions. Or Jared, if you have any feedback, we could pause right there. But when people say crowdfunding, most people gravitate towards rewards-based crowdfunding, which is Kickstarter, Indiegogo, GoFundMe, which is more so donation-based crowdfunding. Rewards-based crowdfunding is when you have a physical product. Let's say Jared and I come up with an iPhone cell phone case that has a solar panel on the back, and we never want anybody to charge their cell phone ever again with the cord. So all you have to do is, buy our case, and you can leave it in the sun, and it'll charge your phone for you. So if Jared and I wanted to launch that business, the smartest way for us to launch that business would be, let's spend $10,000 each and create 1 prototype. Let's, do the prototype modeling, the manufacturing, go to a factory, get 1 prototype made, and for $10,000 or $15,000, get one of these products made after doing all the design work and the product work, right? There is some legwork you have to do, but for minimal cost, get this product up and running and get 1 beta version in our hands. After we do that, the smartest way of launching this business would be going to like Kickstarter or Indiegogo. Say, hey, larger e-commerce world, pre-order this from me. Give me your $200 up front. My cost to make it's going to be $150. And in 6 months, I will take the money you've given me with my profit margin baked in and deliver this to you. So that's what rewards-based crowdfunding is on Kickstarter and Indiegogo, where you can simply come on and through a pre-order digital model, tap into a mass population in the millions of crowdfunding supporters that will give you capital to launch exchange for a product delivered months later. Now that is rewards-based crowdfunding, which if you have a physical product, a clothing line, a technology product, VR headsets, anything that's physical in nature, tabletop board games, furniture lines, anything like that. Rewards-based crowdfunding is a phenomenal path to launch a business with. What we're specifically talking about in this session is equity crowdfunding. So equity crowdfunding really came about over the course of 2015 to 2017 when the Obama administration passed what is called the Jobs Act, the Jumpstart Our Startup Businesses Act, right? That's what the Jobs Act, or the Business Startups Act, is what Jobs Act did. What it allowed businesses to do was to raise capital in exchange for equity, because keep in mind, Kickstarter, you're getting money, but giving a product in return 3 to 6 months later. In equity crowdfunding, you're getting capital up front and you're giving people micro portions of equity in your business for as low as $100. People can buy equity in your business through a credit card. So rewards-based crowdfunding is, we're moving on from that. We're not focusing on equity crowdfunding. Equity crowdfunding really became popular in 2017 when Title III reform of the Jobs Act was passed that allowed unaccredited investors to invest directly in your business. Now, what is an unaccredited investor? If you wanted to be an accredited investor, you have to have one of two qualification criteria. Have a net worth of $1 million outside of your real estate primary holding, or two, make more than $200,000 a year for more than 2 years in a row in a tax return. Either of those, if you qualify, you can get the stamp of what's called an accredited investor. That means you can buy equity or shares in a company directly. Now, if you're not a accredited investor, you have to work with a financial intermediary to buy equity in a company. A Bank of America, JP Morgan, Merrill Lynch, a fund, a money manager. You have to give them your money. If you're not an accredited investor, they invest on your behalf in a portfolio or a specific stock, take their fees, and give you a return on your money. So if you as a consumer wanted to buy equity, you either have to be accredited or work with a financial intermediary or a money manager. What equity crowdfunding did, said, okay, for 95% of the US population that is not an accredited investor, how do they get the opportunity to invest in businesses? That's where equity crowdfunding really came into play, specifically Reg CF equity crowdfunding, which is regulation crowdfunding, equity crowdfunding, that allows for unaccredited investors, which is mass population of the US, over 95%, to directly invest in businesses using their credit card in terms of microequity. That's where equity crowdfunding really came into play in 2017. And that's what the Jobs Act really allowed businesses to do, is to raise capital directly from their network of social media followers, email list subscribers, friends and family for as low as a couple $100 to buy equity in the company. So that's the context of equity crowdfunding. Since the start of the year, we have launched, a dozen equity crowdfunding campaigns at my agency. We fundraised over $10 million, especially during the COVID outbreak where VC capital and angel capital is completely at a standstill. I was reading an article by PwC's accounting team, year over year, quarter one in 2019 over quarter one in 2020, early stage VC investment, which is seed or Series A, has dropped over 40% because of the COVID outbreak. So it was already very hard to get VC funding, as it was as an early stage business. Now your chances are twice as hard to even think about getting it. That's why equity crowdfunding has become such a popular option for businesses, because it allows you to raise up to $1,070,000 from unaccredited investors all across America. So that's where equity crowdfunding is, and that's sort of the context of everything.
That's really interesting. I think from my mind, I'm curious because I come from a marketing perspective. Do you find that with some of this crowdfunding for equity or even for rewards, is there sort of a runoff in your experience of creating micro influencers? Especially, I suppose my mind would go to the equity side, where not only are these investors becoming supporters of the business, but also becoming micro influencers because they feel like they're part of the organization as a whole.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And one thing, and if I'm chopping in and out, let me know. It seems good on my end. But in terms of the brand advocates that you generate through these individuals investing in your company, that is a big part of what's happening when you get people to micro invest in your company. They become, social media advocates, continuously posting on social media. They become, they tell friends and family like, hey, I'm invested in this company, even though if it's, for $100 or $200 or $500, they really become advocates of your brand. And you, especially if you're a digital product, an army of people going around propagating your message and helping you market your company, which is a very great tangential benefit of equity crowdfunding.
Yeah, I mean, I know, and actually I just tossed up a poll because I was just curious about who had actually purchased, crowdfunded products. I get them fed on my Instagram all day, but maybe that's just because Instagram knows I'm an easy target and a sucker to buy anything that looks trendy. But I know personally, the last time I bought into a product, it ended up not being released for a year. But everywhere I would go, I would talk about it. I'd be like, look at this product. It's so innovative, because I was sort of proud. There was a limited number of people that could purchase it. Yeah. And it turned me into an advocate. So I was curious from a more macro perspective that you look at, whether you've seen that in other campaigns or whether honestly I was just a bit of a weirdo. Thank you for that $1 million idea with the solar case. You'll be the agency for me, and we could build the website. But
right, the product that you were just talking about was in the Kickstarter world, because you're getting a product in return. This is equity crowdfunding, where most of these businesses are a little farther on. They're generating revenue, even if their MRR or ARR is in the six figures a year. They're a little farther on. They have a few thousand beta users on their platform, or a few thousand users coming through a month on their technology platform, or customers in general coming through their ecosystem. And now they need capital to grow their business. So when you come into equity crowdfunding, you're getting equity in return, not necessarily a product, which is the key differentiator of equity crowdfunding. Now, there's two big platforms that are dominating the space in equity crowdfunding. One is called WeFunder, 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 and another one is called Start Engine. They're dominating the equity crowdfunding world right now, and Republic as well. They're dominating these three platforms, where you as a business can go create a campaign page very similar to a Kickstarter campaign in terms of the outlook, and they'll file all the paperwork and the forms you need to with the SEC and FINRA and the IRS, and you then have to go and market your campaign and say, hey people, this is my business, this is my revenue, this is my traction, invest for as low as $100 or $250, and you can select the minimum that you want for people to invest in your business. And this is a phenomenal avenue that I recommend businesses to go down. And the key differentiator that I put is, if you have a physical product, let's say you come up with shoes that tie themselves, or the brand new virtual reality headset, or a cell phone case, or a fashion line, or a furniture line that assembles itself, whatever it may be, Kickstarter is an amazing path to go down with crowdfunding. If you're a digital product, an app, a technology platform, a SaaS, a service-based company that's generating revenue, and you need capital to grow, equity crowdfunding is a phenomenal way to go down. So that's a great delineation between the two worlds that I would recommend for businesses to look at, especially as they focus more and more on what path to go down for crowdfunding. And the past, 3-4 big successes that we've had since the beginning of the year, all have been in the digital space. Apps, web-based tools, SaaS-based companies that have leveraged their email list followers, their social media followers, friends and family to go raise the capital.
Yeah, that was going to lead me to one of my questions, which was, hey, we have Krishan who can help us in a number of different ways. How do you help and consult them to decide, hey, you should offer a reward, versus equity? Because there is a balancing act where I think potentially, and maybe you can tell me I'm incorrect, some of these businesses that do have some traction, because they believe so much in their traction, they might not want to give away equity, right? It might be, hey, we need to raise a little bit more money, but it's products without cannibalizing, some of our other channels.
My feedback is, and this is what I always, every time I watch Shark Tank, which I have mixed feelings on as a show, but every time I watch it, when entrepreneurs turn down deals with sharks, I'm like, God, that was a huge mistake, because I would rather have 30% of a $20 million company than 100% of a $100,000 company. You know what I mean? Like, most businesses, 99% of businesses will never make it. That's just a statistical fact. They will never make it to a point past year 2 or past year 3 where they're generating revenue and they're growing as an organization. So if you have the opportunity to acquire capital, to incentivize a few thousand people to be your brand advocates around the world, you should do it. And even if it means giving up a little bit of equity at the early stage, you should definitely do it, because all the odds are stacked against you. And I don't mean to be a pessimist, but we've seen thousands of businesses apply to us, I've studied the hundreds of businesses that have been in our portfolio, and I've, growing ideas into revenue generating organizations, and how do you sustain that revenue generating business model is an academic and a experience-based research subject for me. And this is what my agency does as an organization. So I'm a big fan of, look, the odds are kind of stacked against you, and I'm sorry to say it that way. It's just the truth. If you can give up 10 to 15% of your company at an early stage level, get the capital you need, and even in the most recent Forbes article that I published, I talk about it. Look, if you have the capital, you will make it through team changes, because your people, will leave you. That's just a fact. People turn over, even senior leaders turn over, especially at the early stage level. And if you're talking about launching a business, you will have turnover in your team. You will have to pivot your product. You will have to make it through competitive forces, and the market will change. I mean, look at what happened in the past 6 months, right? Things like this keep happening. As long as you have the capital to make it through these changes, you at least have a shot at continuing to flourish as a business. So capital is king, cash is king. So if that means giving up equity at the early stage to get some capital to continue to make it through these punches, I think most businesses should do it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, obviously not a product company, but as a small business, self-funded, we went through this experience where we had potentials to take a little outside money or culture. And the one thing that, if you want to do it all on your own, you have to be willing to go through the grit. Trellis is in a great place thanks to our clients, but that's after 8 years of some grittiness, right? Which if you took $1 million up front, probably could have wrapped it.
And the key is here. 8 years ago, starting a business in 2012 is not the same thing as starting a business in 2020. I mean, it's fundamentally different landscape right now. That's why I started off my talk by saying, look, the bell curve, right? Trellis is at the top 10%, where it's like, you know what, we're going to bootstrap it, we're going to get it done. And that methodology does definitely apply to a lot of people. And I don't want to take it away from people. If you want to bootstrap it and launch your business that way, it's going to be a little harder and take you a little longer, but it's definitely worth it at the end of the day. But launching a business in 2020, when creating an LLC is $140 on LegalZoom, when creating a website is, $200 on WordPress, when launching Facebook ads is $500, and testing the market is so quick and competitors are popping up left and right, it's a fundamentally different landscape right now in 2020 than it was 10 years ago, right? So that's why I say any chance you can get to go and raise capital through equity crowdfunding or get the capital you need, you should probably think about doing it in 2020.
Just conscious of time, I didn't know whether there was any questions from attendees here. Otherwise, I do have a question I'm curious on. You can feel free to just type it into the nice chat functionality for our session here if you have a question. We'll give people 30 seconds. Thanks, Madison. It's good to know people are alive when we're virtual and we can't see your faces, At least when we're up on stage, we can see people texting on their phones.
Right.
Cool. Well, as people come with an idea, I had a question for you, Krishan. You talked about Shark Tank, and quite honestly, I'm addicted to watching the show. I used to have like a weekly ritual in my early 20s, and maybe that's what gave me my entrepreneurial push. Of watching it every Friday night before I went out to the bars to get pumped up. But how do we combat sort of that culture of, VC and Shark Tanks? And, what advice can you give to young and any entrepreneurs, to be honest, about being realistic with their business and how to approach it, and, not an overnight success making millions of dollars? Because as we mentioned, that's maybe 1/10 of 1%.
Definitely, and one thing that I really, I sit on a couple of boards and advise a couple of high growth startups. One of the things that I always really tell the entrepreneurs that I work with to focus on is your customer acquisition funnel, right? If you can understand, if there's two things you understand as an early stage founder, is what is the cost it takes to acquire a customer, and what is the potential return of that customer or the lifetime value of that customer. If you can wrap your head around those two numbers at a very, very early stage, you can gradually scale your business even without outside capital. So, if you are a consulting company, how long does it take you to acquire a customer, and what is the average lifetime value of that customer? If there's those two metrics you can wrap your head around as a founder, you can build a model. And if you want to go down because that's the foundation of a business. Because if you can do those two things. And the ratio is positive. It takes me $200 to acquire a customer, but the value of that customer to me over 6 months is $600. You have a positive ratio between your CAC and your LTV. You can then either bootstrap your business and grow it organically, or you can go to a VC and raise capital, or you can go to equity crowdfunding and raise capital, because you're going to need the money to hire a team and grow a business no matter how you look at it. So those are the two big ratios that I help our entrepreneurs to focus on. And just to wrap up on the equity crowdfunding side, if there's anybody on this seminar that needs capital, that is interested in figuring out how they can get capital to grow your business, equity crowdfunding is a great option. I just typed in the chat a few different links to two different platforms, our website, my personal LinkedIn, and a Forbes article that I published that talks about this. If there's anybody on here that wants more information, feel free to just message me on LinkedIn. That's the best way to get in touch with me. If you have any feedback, if you need any feedback on how you want to raise capital, if you have an email list, a social media following, and friends and family that support your business, and you need capital, anywhere from $50,000 to $1 million, I think equity crowdfunding is going to be a great way to activate the community around you to raise the capital you need. And the best part is the platforms that you work with don't have any costs. They just take a percentage of funds raised. So it's a very cost-efficient way for you to get this up and running and activate the community around you of unaccredited investors to raise the capital you need.
So helpful for me and hopefully for all. Certainly, Krishan, thank you for your time. And I would take advantage of reaching out to Krishan to get some of his insight. He's very giving with his time, I can tell you, as he's here with us today. For those who want to pop over, you just need to leave this session. And our next session is going to be around some of the legality issues, hopefully helpful for all the founders on today's event, alongside a real legal whiz. So I'll see you over there. Krishan, thank you so much for the time. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody.